this layer, until it reaches this place, near the bottom, one by one. So, this is how a terracotta warrior is made.
The ancient evidence leaves no doubt. The original terracotta warriors weren't just stamped out of molds. Molds did play a part, making hands, ears, and heads. But incredible as it seems, the bodies of all 8,000 terracotta warriors were made individually, by hand, and with techniques that were revolutionary for their time.
The ancient craftsmen used a simple method. They pounded the clay until it became soft, and rolled the clay into strips. Then they coiled the clay strips upward. We call this method clay coiling. The first emperor's craftsmen were the first people in China to make statues this way.
Coiling seems an incredibly laborious way to make over 700 statues a year. Just how hard was it? Archaeologist Chang Zhongli has decided to find out by making a terracotta warrior torso the old-fashioned way, with replica maker Han Pengzhe and his master craftsman.
When we opened our business, we weren't sure how to make a terracotta warrior. I read about the traditional clay coiling method, and we tried it. It took us a month to finish one statue.
The heart of the challenge: make a figure that's 180 centimeters tall, but only 2 centimeters thick, that won't distort or collapse under its own weight, a danger that grows greater and greater as the coiling goes higher and higher. Supporting the figure with wooden sticks helps, but the only real solution is to stop and let the clay dry over and over again before coiling higher. That means stopping work long enough to let the clay dry, but not so long that it dries too much and cracks.
When I looked at the terracotta warriors, I was amazed by the ancient people's achievement. My statues collapsed 3 or 4 times when I first started.
Today, molding a warrior takes 10 days to 2 weeks. Coiling one can take as long as a month. So why did the first emperor's craftsmen, ancient masters of the assembly line, choose coiling over molding? Because molding may be the best way to make the same statue over and over again, but coiling is the best way to make 8,000 different ones.
If these statues were made with molding, it would only be efficient if we made the same copy over and over again. This was not the goal of the ancient people. With the clay coiling method, it is easier to make each terracotta warrior different, whether it was fat or slim, tall or short. The idea was to create a group of humans.
But if coiling made more sense for individualizing the warriors, it was still a slower process. Only one thing could speed it up, and the first emperor knew it. Experts believe he made his terracotta army the same way he built his gigantic tomb, with massive manpower. Archaeologists have found 87 different names stamped on the terracotta warriors. So, 87 master craftsmen must have been in charge of making them. A team of apprentices would have worked under each master. Experts estimate 10 apprentices per team, making at least 87 teams with nearly 1,000 workers. Coiling one statue every month, each team could have finished 12 warriors every year, and all 8,000 in only 8 years. But today's replica makers know that having a huge labor force wouldn't have solved one final problem. A problem that could have destroyed their production schedule. In northern China, winter temperatures plunge below zero, while summer soars to 35 degrees. Both extreme cold and extreme heat will ruin clay statues before they can harden.
From long experience, I think the coiling method that was used 2,000 years ago could not have been done at such temperatures. Ideally, the temperature needs to be maintained at around 20 degrees Celsius.
Without the benefit of modern heating and cooling systems, the ancient warrior makers faced a stark choice. Find a way to keep their workshops at 20 degrees all year round, or stop work for 6 months of the year. No one knows what they did. But replica maker Jiang Binruo has his own theory. Cave houses, dug out of the hillsides by farmers living near the first emperor's tomb. Warm in winter, cool in summer, they're ideal places to live while tending crops. Jiang believes that 2,000 years ago, they were also ideal places to make terracotta warriors.
In the summer, the temperature outside may reach 30 degrees Celsius. Inside the cave house, it may only be 20 to 25 degrees Celsius. In the winter, outside may be minus 10 degrees Celsius, while the cave house remains at 15 to 20 degrees. They sculpted the terracotta warriors in cave houses, then fired the statues by sealing the entry of the cave house and turning it into a kiln, so they could fire the statues inside.
The trials and errors of today's warrior makers bring us as close as we can get to the challenges facing the ancient creators of the terracotta warriors. Sculpting 8,000 warriors in just over a decade, no two of them alike, when no one had ever done it before. But the evidence also shows that making thousands of clay statues wasn't the end of their labors. To satisfy their emperor, the ancient warrior makers had to meet one more challenge. Today, experts are reconstructing the final work that finished the terracotta warriors. What they've discovered has delighted some and shocked others. After more than 35 years, experts have learned a lot about restoring the terracotta warriors. But they're still unable to prevent an archaeological tragedy. Warriors emerge from the earth bearing traces of color. But those colors vanish within a week, sometimes minutes after excavation. Conservation expert Zhou Tie and his team race the clock to save what they can. Our crew was the first ever allowed to film them at work on newly excavated terracotta warrior fragments never seen by the public, fresh from the ground after more than 2,000 years.
When people created the terracotta warriors 2,000 years ago, all the pits were full of color. When we excavated, the paints were almost gone. Only small areas of paint remained, and those were in poor condition. The paint can easily fall off after excavation.
For years, an international alliance of experts from China and Germany has battled to save the terracotta warriors' colors. A battle they still haven't won. But at least they've identified the enemy. A syrup-like substance with a pungent smell that was one of ancient China's most coveted treasures. Lacquer. According to German conservator Katharina Bleinsdorf, every one of the 8,000 terracotta warriors got a coating of lacquer from head to toe.
Lacquer is a very stable material, and also in the antiquity they knew that it can survive centuries or even longer. So it had technical reasons, but also aesthetical reasons and reasons of meaning.
To understand why anyone would find this stuff beautiful and meaningful, you have to understand how valuable lacquer was 2,000 years ago. It was the ancient world's plastic, a hard resin that protected whatever it covered from decay. And when it dried, its brown color transformed into a glossy black nothing else could equal.
Lacquerwares were luxury goods, and it probably was so expensive that only the emperor could afford to lacquer a whole army.
But strength and beauty weren't the only things that made lacquer so expensive. It was also hard to get. The sap of the lacquer tree can't be harvested until the tree is 6 years old. And even then, only from June to September, when the weather is warm. Some experts believe it would have taken the sap of 25 trees to lacquer just one terracotta warrior, and as many as 200,000 trees to finish all of them. That's because lacquer harvesters can take only about 10 grams of sap from each tree, just enough to fill an egg cup.
And you can't take very much because otherwise the tree will die. So you do it once and you let it heal and then you continue it.
And the lacquer trees aren't the only ones at risk. Lacquer's related to poison ivy and poison sumac. Touching it, or just breathing its fumes, can make you wish you hadn't.
I tried to work with the lacquer several times just for experiments, and in the beginning not much happened, but